Now I'd like to welcome Denise Rushing, Managing Director of New Energy Nexus. New Energy Nexus is 100% dedicated 100% to having the world run on renewable energy. They have many great programs that you have heard of here, or that we've supported at CleanStart and pushed forward, like the Cal Seed program and more. So I don't want to steal Denise's thunder on sharing everything that they're doing. So I'm going to quickly welcome Denise Rushing of New Energy Nexus, and I will let her take over.
Thank you, Thomas. And I am just so grateful to be here, and I love the work that you're doing. Let me go ahead and share my screen and get going here. Oops. All right. Yeah, so I just took over as Managing Director for California for New Energy Nexus, and I'm super excited about it, and I'm super passionate about supporting clean energy innovators. And if you don't mind, I'll tell you a little story as to why. I have been working in clean energy since I was in high school, and I too saw the same graph that Al Gore saw on climate. But the story I want to tell you actually takes place 2.5 billion years ago on planet Earth, because life at the time consumed resources at such a level that life produced a poisonous gas that literally was toxic to all life on the planet. 90% of life on the planet died. The gas etched into the rocks, and it was possible that the whole experiment of life would not have continued at all had there not been innovation on the part of life itself. So life innovated, creativity prevailed. The gas itself was oxygen, and the life innovated mitochondria, which was able to take oxygen and use it as fuel. And now, of course, we have this living planet that has been a result of all that innovation. And here we are again. We have, the good news though is that we've been here before, and that's what kind of spurs me on to loving innovation. Like I said, I started in clean energy in high school. I lived through Who Killed the Electric Car. I was involved in so many energy innovation kinds of companies that had to face the valley of death back in, when solar was $100 a watt. And so, we had so many things that we were trying to do. And the good news is so much innovation has happened. And you look at the energy ecosystem today, we dreamed of this. We have the technologies to create a clean energy future. The problem is fossil fuel is driving climate catastrophe, as you all know, and that's why we're all here. The solution is innovation, and the opportunities that we focus on in California really are decarbonizing the energy use of our state. We want to restore natural systems and cycles and reduce consumption, but at New Energy Nexus, we focus on the first one, innovation in energy use. And New Energy Nexus is a nonprofit international organization now that strives to achieve 100% clean energy economy for everyone. We drive innovation and build equity into the global energy economy. We started, though, in California. We fund, connect, and grow new energy innovators worldwide. But again, California was where we began. Literally, our ability to generate funds, to develop accelerators and networks began right here in this state. And since 2004, New Energy Nexus has leveraged $1.5 billion in investment to clean energy enterprises and has launched industry-leading centers around the world. Again, started in California. We are in New York, Uganda, India, Thailand, Indonesia, China, Vietnam, and the Philippines. And later, in a few slides from now, I'll share with you the innovators all over the world that are using New Energy Nexus and the ecosystems innovations. We need innovations and networks now because, of course, we can't do this clean energy transition without not only a lot of innovation, but we need to do it at scale, and we need to do it fast. And that requires networks, and it requires lots of people working on their own innovations. So I'm going to focus a little bit on the California programs. For those of you who don't know the history of it, New Energy Nexus started about 18 years ago. We were funded actually initially by the electric program investment charge, and that's still where the California programs, the bulk of our funding comes from. This is where the state of California, funded by electricity ratepayers, invests in scientific and technical innovations to transform the electricity sector to meet the state's goals. The goals do change and evolve over time. Lots happened in the last 18 years. We support startups across the clean energy value chain, from smart grid or grid enhancements to energy efficiency, all the way to energy storage and e-mobility. The state will, from time to time, choose innovation focus areas, and that's where the programs tend to, the program selection and the funding will go to those innovation areas. But we support startups across the clean energy value chain. Our main two programs are CalSeed and CalTestBed, and where they fit. First of all, I also want to shout out to Blue Tech Valley and everyone involved in this. This isn't something New Energy Nexus does alone, or this, the state programs do alone. This is literally an ecosystem that I wish existed when we started in clean energy, and now the goal is to help entrepreneurs through the toughest times, and so they can come out the other side. In the past, that wasn't the case. It was just entrepreneurs trying to seek venture funding. The venture funding comes in a little bit too late, takes a lot of the company, and now we have ecosystems that allow these innovations to have a real shot at it. This is where it fits. So in our California programs, we accelerate and support the innovators through the valley of death, which some of us have lived through, some of us are in. But in the beginning of the innovation, of course, when you get past the basic research, you need to form a startup, come up with a prototype and proof of concept, and get that innovation tested in the marketplace before you can get a first customer. And so CalSeed and CalTestBed, those are the programs that are literally designed for those early stages in order to help innovators survive that valley and get to their first customer, and hopefully get that follow-on funding that they so desperately need in order to grow their innovations in the world. We also have global network toolkits and resources. You may have seen the publication Accelerate This, which is sort of a survey of best practices in energy accelerators. We provide acceleration networks to anyone who's in this ecosystem, and the way you would access that is actually through our network, which I'll throw a link on the screen in a moment. But we have 90 accelerators in 30 countries now, a global membership in a Slack community online. We have, prior to COVID, had an annual Accelerate Energy Summit. We hope to renew that now. And there's a lot of best practice sharing in the Slack group. It's actually how I was first introduced to New Energy Nexus, and was pretty excited to see all the innovators sharing there. And that's how we accelerate and support one another. If you want to join that network and you're not already in it, newenergynexus.com/network, you'll get on our email list, which you can, if you want to stay on it, you can, or unsubscribe, but it'll get you access to the link to the Slack community. And that's where a lot of the sharing is happening. So I do have some information about the CalSeed and CalTestBed programs specifically, but what I thought I would do is open it up to questions about the programs. Again, and let me just share with you real quickly CalSeed, because this is where most entrepreneurs enter into the program. The grants are up to $600,000, which is actually over time and with milestones that the entrepreneur would achieve. The first award would be a concept award, and the entrepreneur or the innovator applies for concept development and assistance through the application process at calseed.fund, which will open again toward the end of this year or early 2023. We are just about to announce our cohort 5. We're awaiting approval from the California Energy Commission for that cohort. And so the next cohort 6 applications will open in January. So that's $150,000 concept award and mentorship from industry leaders introduction to the resources to advance that concept. And then innovators can then apply for a prototype award through a business plan competition to think about how to commercialize their innovation. So this is sort of the entry program. Then Cal Testbed is the next level program. It's an initiative to de-risk the innovations, and it's not a funding program per se. It's actually through vouchers to the testing labs in the University of California, Lawrence Berkeley National Laboratory, et cetera. And that those innovations are tested by these entities, and the entrepreneur or the innovative company gets the opportunity to access that testing through Cal Testbed. So let me just stop there, put back this slide, and maybe just open it up for questions. Let's see, maybe I'll stop sharing now. There we go for now. If you want me to put that back up, let me know.
We can share a lot of the great links that you had there too. I put some in the chat.
Awesome.
So one of the questions that I kind of have is we really kind of get the Cal seed, it's that early stage, that first in money. Tell us, kind of what has been kind of a successful or the ideal company that Cal Testbed is looking at.
Wow. Okay. So some of the companies that so for example, let's say an innovator is working on a battery innovation, and they've got the theory, they've produced the concept that the battery, they're going to go for innovation around lengthening the life of batteries, or that's probably a good one. So lengthening the life of batteries, monitoring batteries, that sort of thing. They would apply to CalSeed for the concept, but at some point in time, that innovation needs to be looked at and put in a real world situation. And so that's where Cal Testbed comes in. So the testing at the labs is a possibility. It's also, like, for example, with charging infrastructure, it might even be that the UC would be willing to put a little pilot out there and test the infrastructure. So ideally, Cal Testbed is where you actually have a prototype that needs to be validated and tested.
And it's vouchers at different UCs, correct?
Yes, and yes. Typically, what happens is you apply to the program. You're matched with the lab that would be most suitable to the kind of testing that you need, because each of these labs specializes in different things. So yeah, and in fact, you can get the information on. We have a pretty good manual and summary at. I think I'll see if I can check the website here. It is caltestbed.com. So CalSeed's website is calseed.fund, and CalTestbed is caltestbed.com.
So I feel, you recently joined New Energy Nexus, which has, it's one thing I've loved about it is that, honestly, I feel like it's an organization that brings in a lot of the people that are super passionate from the activist community, and brings them into the building and the entire kind of clean energy network. And it sounds like, being someone who's been in clean energy since high school, that's probably something that appealed to you, and appealed to them when, putting you in the position. So where do you kind of see a New Energy Nexus, because they've had Cal Testbed for a bit and CalSeed, where do you see a New Energy Nexus kind of focusing on next?
That's a great question. And to be honest with you, I have been in clean energy for a very long time, but my real focus is climate, and climate I see actually as a symptom of a deeper problem, which is our interconnection with the living systems of the planet, right? So I wouldn't say I left clean energy for a while, but I did take a little detour in that I ran for public office in Northern California, up in Lake County. And I ended up serving 2 terms on the Lake County Board of Supervisors, where, my mission still was to drive clean energy innovation from there, and just to learn what the barriers are at a local level, in these rural communities and small communities. And one thing that we struggle with when we talk about equity in the clean energy economy is our state of California has had, we've had a difficult time in local communities funding anything, right? Because in 1978, Prop 13 passed. So much of the funding that happens now in the state of California happens through grants that sort of, you have to have people who know how to, apply for grants, and you have to have fairly large coalitions built to get the large grants. So we struggle with equity at all levels, but certainly in the clean energy economy, there are equity issues. And when I think of innovation, I think we've started, and New Energy Nexus has made its name on connecting tough tech innovators to funding networks, accelerators. But there's more innovation that's required, as everyone knows. There's plenty of technology that exists that has yet to be implemented. And what are the barriers to implementation? And the barriers tend to be, some of them are political, some of them are cultural, some of them are the processes, institutional and structural processes that don't work. One of our innovators, one of our recent innovators is this company that's helping code enforcement and community development departments in the state of California have sort of a up-to-date information and ability to prove energy innovations faster, right? With information about the codes and how they would be applied and that sort of thing. So we need innovations at all these levels. And so I see New Energy Nexus. One of the things that we strive for is this equity in the clean energy economy. We're attempting to drive equity not only with the tough tech entrepreneurs, but into the communities that maybe have been underserved as well. And that would be rural communities. It might be, communities that just haven't had access to the kinds of resources that are needed in order to convert to clean energy. Many communities have done quite well for themselves in clean energy, and others have not. So we're going to be focusing on innovation at all levels. And my mission, at least initially, we want to continue to run the CalSeed and CalTestBed programs well. We may see some other programs that are funded by the state that we would run too, but we also are interested in seeing accelerators in communities everywhere in the state. And so that would be my long-term vision for where we go, is to help those accelerators accelerate things beyond tough tech, the other problems that are in the way of us getting to a clean energy future. You guys are doing great stuff there, by the way, and I love what you're up to.
That's why we got the trailer to do outreach. And I always want to encourage people to, the first step of connecting and innovating in the underserved communities is go out there and connect with them.
Exactly.
It's a long process. But then I kind of have a follow-up kind of question on that. Is we have an innovation ecosystem. We're trying to do these innovations. They're TRL 1, 2, 3, some of these early ones. Now, those are kind of, then you have the early adopters that usually take them, which are typically, wealthier and also more risk tolerant for what they're purchasing in. How do you kind of see, where's that kind of sweet spot of an early innovation that can go to the, the underserved community, which is not going to be really, for many reasons, doesn't want to take the risk of a new technology,
right,
but does want to be able to participate in it? Do you see the participation being in demo projects, job training or career support? Is there kind of a sweet spot in there?
Yeah, well, again, let's just talk about some of the things that are working. Let me give you an example. In Northern California, as you know, the EPIC funding also focuses on some of the issues that we have around emergencies, and particularly fire. And in the state of California, we have a massive problem in our, not only the forests that have burned that we need regeneration, but and that many of them, by the way, caused by difficulties with the grid. But we also have challenges with biomass being pulled out, because what has to happen is you've got to take care of the forests that haven't burned before they burn in catastrophic fires, because one forest burning creates all kinds of carbon and greenhouse gas emissions. And we want to be smart about that, using perhaps indigenous land management techniques and things like that. But whatever we do, we're creating a lot of biomass that has it has no value right then, because it's hard. You can't truck it anywhere economically, and burning it doesn't make sense. from a climate perspective. So there's lots of different ways to approach that. One way is the energy innovator way, which is to find a way to process that biomass locally, turn it into something that can then be maybe in a low carbon way turned into energy in some form. Another way is nature-based solutions. So we're not directly involved in those, although I track those personally. I'm really excited about some of the things I'm seeing around, ecosystem-based solutions. So there's all kinds of innovation required, and one of the levels of innovation at local areas is like, how do you develop a local economy in keeping with the surrounding landscape? So if you're in a rural area, for example, you want a circular economy that maybe can use that waste, make the forest more healthy, give back to the forest in whatever, biochar or whatever ends up allowing you to have better soil life there, but have some processes that actually will decarbonize not only decarbonize your community, but create a circular economy so that you have an economy. I'm not sure if that answers your question, but there are so many different ways to work with communities that are maybe haven't been on the forefront of the tech revolution and the next level of technology. Another way is to figure out what the barriers are to implementing the technologies that we already have. I mean, you're not going to see, for example, many communities are not going to be transitioning to electric cars anytime soon, right? They're either can't afford them, or the automobiles aren't even an answer for the communities that have disabled and folks like that. So some of the innovations that are required in clean electrifying transportation are going to be around public transportation and maybe even networks and systems and ways to do things more efficiently. And some of them are going to be community-based solutions. We're starting to see those kinds of innovations emerge around how communities can rally together to support one another in clean energy, not only clean energy, but in clean transportation.
Since you mentioned community-based organizations, we had a question on there about what support or does New Energy Nexus offer, or do they have any for community-based organizations? Kenneth Forthall asks.
Yeah, that's a good question. The community-based organization, well, first of all, innovators can apply with their innovations to the programs we run. I'm being super aspirational now about where we might go with some of the innovations for clean energy in the future, especially as we look at what kind of human innovation is required to move more quickly in not only getting the technologies out there, but transforming communities to be able to have the capacity to accept the technologies. In one area that I'm thinking of, well, in many areas, we can't even cite clean energy projects in a quick way because the community is either unfamiliar with it or I'll use Lake County as an example, there may be a lack of trust because communities have literally not, we've been in these rural areas, sometimes we've just been a resource, not thought of as a community, right? We're just a resource that, in many of the North State, we were where all the trees were that you would build San Francisco with. We were, environmental justice is a massive issue in the rural areas of California and in the urban areas too. So there's where we cited energy facilities, manufacturing facilities as a state has created environmental justice issues. Is New Energy Nexus going to solve all that? No, we're going to be working together to innovate where we can. But one of the things we can do is bring to the fore how solutions and networks for how these issues are being solved around the world. One example I'll use, and this is not in the energy area, it's more in the ecosystem restoration area, but there's an organization called Ecosystem Restoration Camps. And they work with local communities to come up with the projects that are going to regenerate deserts, literally in China and in the Middle East and in Paradise, California. They're working with communities that have come together that have decided that they really want life in their region. Those innovations aren't currently funded in the CalSeed and CalTestBed programs. And clean energy is going to definitely be a part of how creating a circular economy for any of those regions that have had that kind of destruction in the past. And dealing with that destruction turns out to be a really important step in anything we want to do going forward, because you have to rebuild community, you have to rebuild ecology, and you have to rebuild economy in these places in order for those kinds of innovations to even be accepted. So I don't know if that makes sense, but what I'm excited about is that so much is happening around the world, but also in the state of California. We literally we're leading in clean tech, and we're leading in decarbonization in the country. We have ways to go with the equity piece, and the state is aware of that and knows that. So so much of where the funding is going for CalSeed and CalTestBed, even we do encourage disadvantaged communities and underrepresented entrepreneurs to apply for these programs, because we want to see these innovations everywhere.
And I would encourage people that, if you're part of a community-based organization, reach out to New Energy Nexus, reach out to us here at CleanStart. If there's something where you're like, hey, I think, I want to help find funding for this, think of us as a partner. We might not, we don't have, state money for it, but when it comes to applying things, I believe Denise, you mentioned supporting people on grants. There's EPIC funding, and there's Air Resources Board funding. I'm going to put a link opengrants.io, which someone from our clean energy ecosystem went and is starting to make, which you can go and find grants to support your organization.
Right.
And I know CleanStart and others would
also the Empower Innovation ecosystem.
I got links to that too.
Yeah, Empower Innovation is a great ecosystem. And again, you join the Slack network, you can ask the community if they are aware of grant funding. But there you go, empowerinnovation.net. So there's a massive amount of funding coming through both the federal level and the state level. It'll probably, in California, a lot of it might be implemented through the California Energy Commission, although it's not clear yet. But we're seeing big investments in climate, and those investments are involving not just technology now. They're involving community capacities and community readiness. We don't run a fund at New Energy Nexus that is investing in community capacities yet, but my hope is that that's something that happens, and if we're the ones that end up running it, that's great. But we're an ecosystem, so we would like to support everybody who's doing this work, and you're seeing some of these ecosystems, some of these ecosystem partners are focused on these funds. So again, take a look at those websites. Empowerinnovation.net is a good one. Join the Slack group. In fact, I'll try to get that link in there before we close.
And Gary, typically we always go to you for the first question, but I just had so many.
Let me just ask you to amplify a bit, Denise, on the annual Accelerate Energy Conference. If you're looking around the world at where you've gotten some work started, is that going to be a virtual conference? And tell us a bit more about what occurs at that conference.
Well, that's a great question. And I have to be completely honest with you, I have not been to one. I've just started my role at New Energy Nexus. So I do have the brochure, and it looks like it's a place for energy innovators to network, and particularly those that are running accelerators, like best practices for energy accelerators at a local level. So I'm not running that conference, but and the dates haven't been announced for the next one, but we sort of rode out, they were always in person. And I think obviously we're going to have either a virtual option now, or it's nice to have them in person though, because that you get sort of a level of conversation that it's difficult to get on a virtual stage. However, everything's gone virtual, right? So there's certain, I'm noticing yesterday or 2 days ago, I noticed the California Energy Commission is back to meeting in person, but they have a virtual option. So we're going to try to get into this hybrid.
I think for those of us who have spent time, in the last 26 months being virtual, we'd hate to give up the fact that we're not causing a whole lot of carbon emissions traveling.
Exactly.
It's been such a help. So I hope there is a virtual option on that.
Right. Well, we do
But-
encourage in each of the local innovative clusters, we do encourage local events that people can meet one another, because you find that the virtual events are that much more powerful if folks have had an opportunity to meet at least once. So we're going to be, we'll have gatherings here in Oakland for those in the Bay Area. I know that Clean Tech Open's having a couple gatherings in advance to launch their programs. So
Right.
you're starting to see these things emerge. For my part, I like to see a virtual option because, again, it's preferable not to have to travel and commit that carbon to the totals that our society is producing.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that, and I hope it will have the option. I agree with you that in-person gives you some things that virtual can't replicate, but
yeah, and to the extent, it's possible too. And the models I've seen work really well are models where you have local gathering, but there's a virtual stage where everybody's connected to it, right? So you get, so we're going to experiment with some of those kinds of things.
time for some innovation there too.
Exactly.
And I would
There's
point out
a gift to the pandemic. A gift of
Right.
the pandemic was that we are all getting used to virtual communication.
Yeah, I mean, I think we all found that pretty amazing how simple things like the meeting we're having right now turn out to be.
Yeah, it's amazing.
So,
We live in interesting times. I'm pretty excited about where we are. Like I said, things are happening that we only dreamed of. Now, granted, things look really dire, right, on the planetary front. And so these innovations are absolutely required, but it's time to step up, right?
well, it is. And I'm just thinking about the conversation we were just having on things that communities could do. There's another whole level of innovation in organizing entrepreneurs to address things that are going on in overlooked communities.
Right.
And I think there is, as you say, a lot more funding coming in that area.
Right. And I bundle entrepreneurs and innovators together, because it's not just entrepreneurs. Innovators, maybe there are community-based organizations that don't intend to start a business, but they are certainly innovative. And I've seen, for example, I've seen experiments on time banking. I've seen experiments on local projects that help communities out. Well, in fact, in Lake County, one of the projects that's amazing is Citizens Caring for Clear Lake. They're probably doing more for the health of Clear Lake than any single organization or any governmental organization, because they've organized citizens to clean up the creeks and clean up illegal dumping around. Yeah, so it's fantastic what the work that community-based organizations are doing.
Well, absolutely. And I would point out, another example that we have here in Sacramento, with the insight that even if you would improve public transit, there's a lot of communities that are not on public transit lines.
Exactly.
And our local Metropolitan Air Quality District started a program of electric vehicle sharing.
Yeah.
So it's, things where they can put in the chargers and make available the vehicles at a reduced rate, and that took off like crazy. And in fact, that's now being taken over by an entrepreneur. Because
that's fantastic.
Yeah,
and that last mile is always the problem, right? In public transportation, it's that last mile.
That's it, and
especially for those who are, who don't have mobility and can't. They may not drive, but they also, one of the reasons they may not drive is that they may not be able to go a mile to the bus stop.
Well, that's it, and one of the people commented on that. The example was, in talking to somebody who's availed themselves of that opportunity, what difference has it made in their lives? And they said, we can now bring ice cream home.
Yeah.
If you had to take multiple bus rides and walk a last mile, it wouldn't survive. Exactly. And now our family can actually enjoy ice cream. It's sort of like that one hits you in the face.
Yeah. And some have described it as a lifeline. Yeah.
So
it allows living.
The point is, innovation, even in that context, can sometimes lead to good business opportunities, and things are paid for that way.
Well, I love celebrating innovators and innovation, and it's in part because the creativity is required, obviously, but also because those who are innovating are creating positive change in the world as well. They're getting people excited, and this is true of and all levels of socioeconomic and all levels of on the political spectrum. You can pull people together around innovation, and it can be fun and exciting and community-based, and people are then working together and talking with each other, and you're reducing the polarities that we have in our political system. You're bringing people to a place where they're feeling empowered instead of victims. There's so many positive benefits to innovation married to local community. So that's the frontier, and I'm pretty excited about that one.
Yeah, and in fact, in the Cal Seed applications, one of the criteria are, what benefits do you bring to disadvantaged communities?
Mm-hmm.
And I serve on as a judge in that. And what I've identified is that we really don't have good examples of what would earn you a 5
Mm-hmm.
in that. So everybody tends to get a 3, and they all say, well, we'll set up factories in disadvantaged neighborhoods.
Yeah,
we have to think about that more.
exactly. And how do you, well, and I will pose this question as sort of toward the end of our time together. The question is, how do we have a resource, and that is human potential. And so much of it is untapped.
Right.
There are people who feel powerless or aren't exercising the power they have in appropriate ways. Right. So the question I have for all of you is, how do we reactivate imagination and human potential? What ways can we do that? And I feel like when I was a kid, I remember science, and we were building Star Trek. That was our goal, right? We were gonna make a better world with technology. And somewhere along the way, we sort of lost. It may have been an invalid dream because it really didn't include the natural world part of it that well. But right. Also we sort of lost the thread of what it takes to motivate and activate and tap into the imagination of everyone. So I would challenge us to think in those ways.
Well, I think that's important because increasingly we're creating a division. And, we've just recently felt that going out with our outreach trailer, but, there's just a big difference between talking to ourselves and being all excited about, extending rooftop solar, for example. And then you talk to people and say, I can't even make rent next month.
Exactly. And if we don't address those issues, the political headwinds are going to be too strong for us to move quickly, right? We need to reimagine.
Well, it's very important because the last thing we want to do is create a division which slows down the transition that we're all looking for.
So those are the innovations needed. Put your thinking caps on.
Yeah, those are hard. Your head hurts.
Those are the harder ones. And I spent, like I said, a good part of my career sort of thinking through and trying to doing experiments on those kinds of innovations. And I found a few things that work, but I'm just one person working in one community. There are so many cool things that are happening, and part of it is just sharing what works, right? And just a hint, by the way, is if you can find something that all sides can agree is a problem they want to work on together, it gives people practice in working with one another. And in Lake County, that was fire preparation, right? Or preparing for wildfires and preventing wildfires. So for us in our community, it didn't matter where you were on the socioeconomic spectrum or the political spectrum, you did care about that, right? That was something we could work on together.
Well, I would look forward to that, and I think other people would join in it. And if there's any way that New Energy Nexus could have a program and like giving awards for the best.
Oh, that's a great idea. Thank you.
Community-based, working in overlooked communities activity. We all need to put on our thinking caps and find better ways. But awards like that bring attention, and they get people to imitate.
Awards and we called them hackathons on the tech side, right? But awards and that's a great idea. Thank you.
So let us leave you with that. But we've come to the end of our time here. We really appreciate it. I think there's been a lot of activity going on. We restream this on LinkedIn and Facebook and YouTube. So I know there was a pretty big population out there that was joining us through other means. So I think your message has been communicated excellently, and really appreciate your time this morning, Denise.
Thanks so much. I've really enjoyed it, and I love what you're up to. You keep doing it.
Look forward to meeting you in person sometime if we can get over the guilt of the carbon emissions involved.